All right, guys. Today we are going to be reacting to JD Vance Slam Media for giving Harris a 3-week love fest. Jump in.
This is not an election for just the MAGA vote. Trust me, Donald Trump has that. Republicans need to be fighting for suburban women, for college-educated, for independents, for moderate Republicans, and conservative Democrats. They want to be asked for that.
Former presidential primary candidate Nikki Haley urging the Trump campaign and all Republicans to appeal to a broader group of voters than the already
We're not doing
committed
that. We're not
MAGA
doing that.
base. Joining me now, Republican vice presidential nominee and Ohio Senator JD Vance. Welcome back.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's start there. This race is much different than what you were looking at a month ago. It is much tighter. You have said Republicans, quote, are going to need every vote they can get. You heard what Nikki Haley had to say. Here's what Karl Rove says, echoing her. He's going to be on the show later. He says Mr. Trump so far has largely focused on themes that appeal only to his true believers, childish insults and talk of stolen elections, January 6 political prisoners, and a weaponized justice system. That won't win him a single vote he doesn't already have.
He doesn't need
that.
that.
You know the faithful are with you.
He doesn't need that. He doesn't need to earn new vote. If you're right now, it's almost September. If you don't know who you're voting for, we don't need your vote. We don't need your vote. At this point, you're not a very well-equipped voter. So we don't need it. Just sit down this election and don't vote. But at this point, you don't know who you need to vote with. Man, we don't need your vote.
More can and should your campaign be doing to reach beyond those boundaries?
Well, first of all, I think Ambassador Haley is right that we have to reach a broader group of voters, but I think that we're doing exactly that, Shannon. If you look at what President Trump has been saying at his rallies, what I've been doing at my rallies and my press events, is we've been making a very simple argument that when Kamala Harris became president, or vice president, I should say, she caused policies that led to a rapid increase in inflation and a rise in chaos around the world. When Donald Trump was president, we had stable prices, we had prosperity, we had higher take-home pay for American workers, and we had peace across the world. The contrast is really remarkable. And importantly, Shannon, we actually have a vision for bringing down energy costs, for bringing down food costs, for making housing more affordable for American citizens. And we have been running on that. And of course, the media has been giving Kamala Harris a 3-week love fest. But the unfortunate fact for Kamala Harris is her record is her record. And we're going to prosecute the case that Donald Trump caused peace and prosperity. Kamala Harris caused chaos and lower take-home pay. I think that we get that message out there, Shannon. I feel very confident the American people are going to elect Donald Trump president in November.
All right, I want to get to some of the policy, but first, a little bit more on the campaign. Much has been made of the fact that Corey Lewandowski is returning to the campaign. President Trump is well known for doing some shakeups in the summer leading up to his elections in 2016 and 2020. Here's an analysis from the Washington Post. They say this: with so many seeking his confidence, there's one thing that no one will tell him. What's most in need of fixing is the candidate himself. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy says he's had these conversations with the president. He is open. He's receptive to it. Who is the president listening to, and are there going to be more changes at the top of the campaign?
Well, anybody who knows President Trump will tell you he listens to everybody. I think it's one of his great strengths as a leader is he solicits opinion from his campaign staff to the people who serve him his food at a restaurant. He's trying to get feedback from everybody because he actually wants to understand where the American people are on the issues of the day. But look, you listen to one of Donald Trump's rallies. Go to his North Carolina rally from just a couple of days ago. He was talking about Americans suffering under higher prices. He was talking about the need to bring down housing prices so that young people can afford to get in a home. He was talking about the need to bring groceries down to the level that they were at when he was president, Shannon, because normal Americans could afford to put a nice meal on the table. These are very simple things, and I think that what a lot of the people who are giving Donald Trump advice would, I think, do well to understand is that Donald Trump is carrying the message out there to the American people every single day. I'm doing it every single day, and we're just going to keep on doing it for the next 80 days, and that's how we persuade the American people to elect Donald Trump the next president of the United States. That's really what the campaign is all about. I think we're very receptive to feedback, but at the end of the day, if you look at our messaging, we're focused on the issues that Americans care about, and we're going to keep on doing that.
You know what's crazy? You can tell a lot of these losers don't trust Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has really showed them that he's the man. He knows what he's doing. A lot of these Republicans, they're very weak. Like the first one that I'm thinking about is Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is his name. the one from South Carolina. Such a weak, pathetic guy, man. Always trying to just go with the wave, right? He doesn't really any stand for anything. Then you have Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is just a sore loser. Nobody wanted to vote for her. The people that voted for her were not even Republicans. The majority of them. There was a bunch of Democrats. So on top of that, she's saying that now you have to appeal to women. You have to appeal to women like a Democrat. You have to appeal to women. What about we appeal to the country? What about if we appeal to the country? What are we supposed to appeal? With the Conservative Party, what are we supposed to appeal to these women? Abortion? Abortion? Single moms? Like, how good is that? That means that you have to really cut fat from your base to just put some of the newest idea, and then you're going to lose your base. Because you're basically... How can I say this? You're basically giving up your base to just get new voters. You are releasing one bird to grab another. And that never works well. The base is already fired. He needs to keep the base on fire and just keep spreading his current message. That's it.
I mean, our Fox News polling does show the economy is the #1 issue and that people do give you all the edge on that. And yet, this is what we have out from some new polling out of the New York Times. They say Ms. Harris is now leading Mr. Trump among likely voters in Arizona 50-45 and is even edged ahead of Mr. Trump in North Carolina, a state Mr. Trump won 4 years ago, while narrowing his lead significantly in Georgia and Nevada.
That's crazy. I don't even know how that happened.
What is the administration doing, the campaign doing with that data as it comes in? I mean, these are critical states that you got to have a path to 270. Are there any pivots? Are there any, reconfiguring of what you're doing in the strategy? Because you talk about your message, but is it not landing?
That's great. It's a stupid question, man. Even though, man, those polls that went, you know how crazy people have to change their opinions for those polls to go like that? It's almost 10-point shift. It's almost a 10-point shift. They're treating Kamala like she's not part of this administration, which is crazy.
Let me say two things about this, Shannon. First of all, the polls tend to radically overstate Democrats. We certainly saw that during the polling of summer of 2020 and summer of 2016. And of course, a lot of those polls were wrong when it came to Election Day. The second thing I'll say, Shannon, is what we have certainly seen is that Kamala Harris got a bit of a sugar high a couple of weeks ago. But what we've actually seen from our own internal data, Shannon, is that Kamala Harris has already leveled off. If you talk to insiders in the Kamala Harris campaign, they're very worried about where they are because the American people just don't buy the idea that Kamala Harris, who has been vice president for 3.5 years, is somehow going to tackle the inflation crisis in a way tomorrow that she hasn't for the past 1,300 days. Giving Kamala Harris control over inflation policy, Shannon, it's like giving Jeffrey Epstein control over human trafficking policy. The American people are much smarter than that. They don't buy the idea that Kamala Harris represents a fresh start. She is more of the same. It is doubling down on the failed policies of the Harris administration to give Kamala Harris a promotion rather than to fire her, which is what I think most Americans are going to do on November.
How does that not line up then with another poll we got out this morning, Washington Post, ABC? They're giving the vice president nationally a 4 to 5 point lead.
That's crazy.
Those are new numbers. So if you think the momentum is not swinging, or your internal polls are...
So you're saying that these people just changed their mind because we just put somebody else there? Like they all of a sudden Kamala Harris had nothing to do with Biden. Have you guys thought about this? And the fact that she was not even elected, she doesn't even have a base, man. And she's just winning. Does this sound like it makes sense, folks?
Adjusting differently, every other poll that's been released has shown great momentum in her direction.
Sure.
You know, Shannon, I think there are a lot of polls that actually show her stagnating and leveling off. Of course, ABC Washington Post was a wildly inaccurate pollster in the summer of 2020. And look, if you see the numbers that we're seeing and you actually talk to the American people, I feel extremely confident that we're going to be in the right place come November. We can't worry about polls. We have to run through the finish line and encourage everybody to get out there and vote. But our message is going to be very simple.
Man.
If you want to get back to the peace and prosperity, the rising take-home pay, Donald Trump delivered it once and he can do it again. If you want to double down on the failed policies that have delivered higher food...
You know what's crazy about these videos? It's all about identity politics. You have bodyguards as females. You saw that? You guys saw that? Crazy. Bodyguards as female. Everything is about identity politics.
Food prices and higher housing prices. Well, Kamala Harris has been vice president for 3.5 years, and I guarantee she's going to make the problem worse if the American people give her a promotion.
So
the thing we have to
this.
remember, one final point, let me just say one final point on this, Shannon, because I think it's important. Consistently, what you've seen in 2016 and 2020 is that the media uses fake polls to drive down Republican turnout and to create dissension and conflict with Republican voters. I'm telling you, every single person who's watching this, the Trump campaign is in a very, very good spot. We're going to win this race. We just have to run through the finish line.
Okay, I want to give you a chance to respond to some of this back and forth on financial issues. This is what the vice president had to say about what your ticket is planning for America.
He plans to give billionaires massive tax cuts year after year. And he plans to cut corporate taxes by over $1 trillion, even as they pull in record profits. And that's on top of the $2 trillion tax cut he already signed into law when he was president.
She also talked about the plans for tariffs, as you heard Senator Coons talk about. Other economists have said those tariffs, along with mass deportations that would impact the workforce, will also drive up prices for Americans.
Wow, geez.
Well, Shannon, I don't buy that argument because Donald Trump was already president. He already secured the wall. He already implemented tariffs, which brought back 12,000 American factories were built during Donald Trump's administration, and prices were low and take-home pay was high. The entire argument of the Kamala Harris campaign boils down to forget how good things were when Donald Trump was president. Forget that we had rising take-home pay. Forget that we had low inflation. Forget that we had peace all over the world. And somehow, if you give Kamala Harris more power than she already has, she's somehow going to do something different than she's done for the past 3.5 years, Shannon.
Make no sense.
The most absurd thing that Kamala says at her rallies is, on day one, I'm going to tackle the food and housing affordability crisis in this country. Shannon, day one for Kamala Harris was 3.5 years ago, and everything that she's done has made the affordability problem worse. We cannot give her more power and more influence. She's just going to do more of the same, which has already made the affordability crisis for Americans very, very real.
Well, we'll see if she presents something that's different or a break with the Biden administration when she speaks here this week. But quickly before we go, I want to touch on foreign policy as well. Ukraine, you have been very vocal in saying, you know, the resources and the tax dollars that are going there, you have serious questions about whether the American people are being told the truth about Ukraine's ability to actually advance there. Now, we know there are all kinds of reports this week. They've actually advanced into Russia. They are taking prisoners. They're taking territory. So has your view on that changed at all? And what about Senator Coons' assertion that you and President Trump aren't going to be faithful to NATO, you're not going to be faithful to foreign policy alliances, and that allies shouldn't be able to count on you?
Well, what Chris Coons is saying, look, I like and respect Chris, but he's just wrong here. What Donald Trump and I have said is that there shouldn't be a free lunch for Europe or anybody else.
Yep.
America is not the policeman of the world, and NATO should...
Yeah, like we have to just basically spend our resources just because Europeans, they don't want to, you know, simply just get their hands dirty. No, man, we're not playing that anymore. These people not even paying us enough money to keep, you know, these bases, you know, out. So they have to get their hands dirty. They basically, they're not worried about Ukraine and Russia because they know the United States is going to be there. And that's a problem, folks, because that means if there's a war, Americans have to lose their life to protect the Europeans, because, you know, the Europeans, they have all this free stuff. They have all this great lifestyle that we protect. We, the Americans, protect them. Stupid.
Should be a military alliance where Germany, France, and all these other countries pay their fair share rather than relying on American taxpayers to subsidize their defense so they can have generous welfare states while American veterans are sleeping under park benches. It's ridiculous, Shannon. We want NATO to be a real alliance, and the way that it's going to be a real alliance is for Europe to pay up, to do what's necessary, and to allow us to focus on the most pressing foreign policy challenge we have had in nearly a century, and that is China. And that is what Donald Trump and I are going to focus on. Rebuilding American factories, bringing more manufacturing jobs back to this country, not allowing the Chinese to build their middle class on the backs of ours. And importantly, if we do that, we will be in a better position to stand up to China for the next 50 years in this country. That is what we've got to focus on, and that's the most important foreign policy problem.
Well, we look forward to the president talking more about those tariffs, exactly how they would work. Senator, in the meantime, we will not see you in Chicago this week, but we will see you on the campaign trail. Thanks for your time.
Very good. Nice interview. Nice interview. I mean, when it comes down to stuff like this, it's just making sure that we're staying on topic. People, this thing is not real. I mean, all of a sudden, Kamala Harris is favorite in a lot of these places. This thing makes no sense. She's 5. She's 5. She's leading Trump supposedly 5 points in Arizona. Crazy. When some of these polls, Trump was, leading by 10 almost. Insane, bro. Insane. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one.